Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the life divine with our beloved Ranga. Today, Ranga is going to do something different on the idea of rebirth.
Today, I propose to revise whatever we have done up to now from this chapter, the philosophy of rebirth, so that we get a bird's eye view of the whole thing and it becomes clear. Reading Sri Aurobindo is not very easy. Okay? He does not tell you what he intends to do. If he told you that I am going to follow this method or I am going to do it in this way, then we can understand where he is going. But without telling you where he is going, he starts. He doesn't say, I am starting from Pondicherry to go to Chennai. He says, Pondicherry is here, and then he starts describing whatever is here. So you don't know exactly where he is going. Okay? So that's why today I propose to give an overview, a bird's eye view of the philosophy of rebirth. What we are doing today, the subject that he has taken up is the philosophy of rebirth. Here in Life Divine, there are 3 chapters with 85 pages describing rebirth, all the conditions and how it is possible, when it is possible and all that. And he does it with 85 pages in 3 chapters. The philosophy of rebirth, chapter 1. The second one, the order of the worlds. The third one, karma. So these are all related subjects and he has done that. So we are now in the middle of the second chapter, but as I said, it's pretty complicated, so we'll go step by step and see how he is proceeding. Okay, so. But I must tell you one thing, that what he has described here in 85 pages in Life Divine, he has done it in volume 13 in 180 pages. And it is much clearer. So where is 85 pages and where is 180 pages? Sri Aurobindo can put a subject in one para, and he can take the subject matter of that one para and give you a whole chapter. He has the capacity to expand or to compress. Okay? So now, that's very interesting because it is like specialization in medicine. Okay? So, George Bernard Shaw said that a specialist is one who knows more and more about less and less, until finally he knows everything about nothing. Okay? Now in Sri Aurobindo's case, it's exactly the opposite. He knows everything about everything. So that's an interesting part. And so he can compress a whole subject into a very short span of one para, or he can develop it into one chapter. So that's what he has done. In the other one, 180 pages of the same subject, much more in detail and easier to understand. In Life Divine, it's pretty tough. Okay? So with this, I begin what he has said, the philosophy of rebirth. Okay? So, he starts the chapter philosophy of rebirth by making one remark. He says, when we, in the physical world, when we look, we find there is birth and there is death. And both are highly puzzling to one who doesn't understand this. From where is this birth coming? And when there is death, what is happening? And why this short span? And if there is death, if there is a being in that body-mind life, where is it going after the death? So these are the 2 mysteries which confront us when we look at the question of death and birth. Okay, so, yeah. So, when there is death, he says the body-mind life is disappearing. But is there something that survives after that? Okay, and he has described many theories, and he has discussed each theory. For instance, the materialist says that there is no survival of any individuality or any soul or anything after death. It is born and it dies, it's only in the material world. Okay? So, then there are many others also who have the same idea, that there is only one world. So the materialist says there is one world. The Mayavadin says that there is only one real Brahman. So this is the opposite view, but there is only one. real. And so this is one thing that he has discussed also in detail. Okay, so now, if there is an individuality in that body-mind life which is being born, okay, what is it? From where is it coming? He says. Okay, so is there? Then there is another thing. If the soul is coming from and taking birth in the life, is there another world or is there only one world? As I said, materialism says there is only one world, and Mayavada says there is only one world, which is the Brahman. Okay, so these are the two opposite things. Now, now he says that, can we say that there is a third source from which there are not only two planes, but there is a third source? He discusses that. Okay, so he discusses also life and mind. He says we find that there is also life and mind. From where are they coming? Universal life and universal mind, from where are they coming? Okay, so he says that if we have to find the source of life and mind, they are in the universe. So maybe if we find the secret of the universe, we will get the answer to the life and mind also. And then we will be able to enlarge our view of things. Okay. So if there is a question of survival of the individual, okay, we note that even apparently the individual, his works and actions. Now there is another thing. You may say that the individual does not survive after body-mind life. Okay, the materialist view. But the works that he does in the physical world survives. Suppose I have planted a mango tree. I have gone away, but the mango tree continues to live. So my works continue to exist in the physical world even after the individual has disappeared. This is also another interesting aspect. Okay, so the inventor of the mobile dies, but the mobile still remains. That's his work. So this is another thing. So survival is a very many-faceted question. Okay, so
and how long is that survival?
That depends on what is surviving.
Yes.
It's more than likely that the mobile will survive a long time. It's likely that the mango tree will not survive for after 400 years. Okay, so that's why Sri Aurobindo raises a question, but there are so many side issues that we have to concentrate simply on what he is focusing on. Okay, so the second, third. Okay, then now he says that tradition in almost all civilizations, the tradition has been that there is a soul that survives. Okay, so we take up that issue. Okay, so the survival after death, tradition and birth, death and birth posit that there is such a soul. So we will now proceed on the basis that there is, because if you take only materialism, there is no purpose, there is no aim. You come into the world and you disappear, but what's the purpose of the creation at all? Why did the divine create the world? So there must be a purpose, so you have to look for some purpose. Okay, so that. Then the other question is that if there is a soul, does it survive after death or does it disappear? Now that also is an interesting question. Different philosophies have different answers. Christianity says that the soul survives. It has no beginning, it has a beginning but no end. So at the end of the death of the body, the soul either goes to heaven or to hell. It survives. But there is no beginning, there is a beginning to it but no end. Now that Sri Aurobindo finds a little illogical. Okay, so he examines each question and he disposes of one by one, and he comes to rebirth also has been asserted by many systems of thought, okay, many philosophies. So let us try and find out what is this rebirth. Okay, so he is examining all the theories and discarding many because they are not very probable. They are improbable, so he goes on discussing one by one. Okay, so Now, there are some philosophies which say rebirth exists, but they can't explain the purpose of rebirth. So, if there is a rebirth, there is a soul that is coming into the physical world and going back. Why is it coming here at all? If it is coming from the supreme level of existence, it is coming down here in a world which is the opposite of the divine. It's full of suffering, death, pain. Okay? So, why is it coming here and going up? The divine has got everything. So, why is it coming into this opposite? There has to be a purpose to it. If it is purposeless, then there is no meaning to it. So, Sri Aurobindo says we have to find a purpose and a meaning to rebirth. And then he says, he gives his own theory, and then he says that when we consider evolution, not the biological evolution, but the evolution of consciousness, then there is one that the soul is coming down here for purpose of evolution. That is one. And then the individual also must be a real individual, not as in Mayavada or in the Buddhistic theory, there is no soul. There is only a manifestation which is impossible to explain. Buddha says that there is no, Buddha doesn't say, Buddhism says that there is no soul. Okay? But there is liberation. So if you challenge him and say, how is liberation possible without somebody being liberated, he will answer to you that this is a question that you cannot answer at the physical level. You have to go beyond the mind, you will get the answer, you won't ask a question. And you will experience that it is true. Okay? So, Sri Aurobindo says now that if there is an evolution and the individual is real, then there is a purpose to evolution, a purpose to rebirth. So, rebirth becomes meaningful if there is evolution and there is a real individual. Note that both can be challenged. There are many theories which say no evolution at all. There is no evolution. Even some materialists say there is no evolution. Okay? But there is a biological evolution, you can say, they even deny that. And the reality of the individual also is denied. Buddhism denies the individuality of the soul. Okay, so now the question is, this world is coming, the soul is coming into this world and going back. So, if the soul is going back after death, the soul is existing, he takes up one by one all the questions. So, then it must be that there are other worlds. After death, if the soul is real, if it is not existing in the physical world, where is it going? So, there must be another world. Now, the question is, now he shifts to the reality of these worlds. We have already seen that there are arguments that there is only one world, the material, or the divine world, which is the Brahman consciousness. Now he says, could it be possible that there are only two? The Brahman consciousness and the divine and the physical world. Or you want soul and nature, or Purusha Prakriti. Okay? The divine and the self. So then he says that when you look at very carefully at the physical world, you see the principle of life here and you see the principle of mind. But they are not matter. They exist here, but they are different grades. So if it is possible that the physical world is creating life and mind, is it also not possible that there is a third source which is creating all the three? Okay? So he says if it goes there, then we can go even further on. Okay? There can be more worlds. So he says, let's look at other theories. Many philosophies say there are only 5 planes: ether, air, fire, water, earth. Some philosophies say there are the Rig Veda, the Vedanta, the Vedic system says there are 7 worlds. And Sri Aurobindo says, I will take that and base my philosophy on the 7 worlds. Sat, Chit, Ananda, Supermind or Vijnana, and mind, life, body. We will go on this basis. Okay, so then he starts examining, okay, we agree that there are subtler worlds, supra-physical worlds. Now, what is their nature? So he has travelled a long way again from the rebirth and he has come to the nature and the number of worlds that exist there. One by one he is looking at them. Okay? So now the question is, who is evolving? Is it the individual who is evolving, or is it the universe itself which is evolving? That question also he looks at. Okay? So So, we have now in the second chapter, okay, so now the question is, the soul is real, we accept. We now proceed our argument on that basis. If the soul is real and immortal, where does it go after the death of the body? Are there other supraphysical planes? He has discussed that. So, how many planes are there? That also he has discussed. Then he comes to these 7 planes. Okay? Some say there are 5 planes, some say there are 7 planes. Mother mentions infinite number of planes. She even speaks of 12 planes. When she was in Algeria, she had the experience of going to all these planes to the highest level because her, at that time, mentor, Theon, yeah, he said that I want the secret of life from the highest level, and you are capable of taking your consciousness to the highest level. So you go there and keep speaking and tell me what is the secret of life. Okay, so she goes there, but she finds that Theon's attitude is not very so. In fact, he even cut the silver cord.
Yes.
He cut the silver, and the silver cord is one that connects the physical world with the, when you go out of your body, you are connected with the soul and the body, mind, life are connected with the silver cord. It's a subtle cord, but if it is cut, then you can't come back into your body. So he did that to mother. But mother, because of her divine nature, she could come back. But she never revealed it to him. She revealed it to Srivda when she came here, the secret of life. Okay, so then now he comes to the nature of evolution. What is evolving? What is evolution? Where is it coming to? Okay, is it only a biological evolution or is there a spiritual evolution? In Srivda's view, it is the biological evolution does exist, but it is much more important to consider the evolution of consciousness, the spiritual evolution. They are parallel, they go together, and there has to be a biological evolution so that the evolved individual can take a body which is fit for its consciousness. Okay. It is very clear that there has to be a body which is capable of housing that spiritual consciousness. We can see easily that the mind element cannot exist in a caterpillar. So the caterpillar body is not capable of embodying a consciousness which is higher than its own. So exactly in the same way, the mental consciousness cannot embody itself in a very primitive animal body. So man has got the mental consciousness, but does he have a spiritual consciousness? So the body also must develop to such an extent that the spiritual consciousness is capable of housing itself in this superior
form,
material body in a sense, but a divine body.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the evolution that he is talking about. Okay, so then he says that evolution is okay, but there is necessarily an involution. If there is no involution, how can there be evolution? The tree cannot exist if the tree is not existent already in the seed. So if it is existent in the seed can develop that and go there. So involution and evolution are very much connected. Science talks about evolution, but they don't speak about involution. Science has not understood the principle of involution, so that it comes up. Okay, so then there is another question which arises. So the examines every possibility, discusses it, and either disposes it off and says, no, I will follow another system, or he gives some credit to it and he goes on. Okay, so now, who is evolving? Is it the all soul or is it the individual soul? And why is the physical world created at all? He has said because of evolution. So now who is creating the individual soul? This also there was an argument with Paul Richard, and when Srivda was here, he was saying that it is desire that creates the world. But Srivda said it is not desire, but it is Ananda that creates the world. The world is created for the enjoyment of the divine. He is enjoying. And how is he enjoying? He is enjoying through all the souls that are here. Each soul has the capacity to evolve from this material level to the spiritual level, and the divine is enjoying this in a multiple way. Okay? Infinitely he is going on enjoying. So he discards the theory of desire being creating the soul, but it's the ananda that creates the soul. Okay? Because can the divine have desire? No. Desire is something, you desire something when you don't possess it. Desire means that there is an absence of something which you are desiring. But the divine has everything. So desire cannot create the world. It is ananda. He creates the world because of ananda. Okay, so this is what he comes to. You can see how detailed he is going into each. Okay, then. Also you may note that creation itself, at any level, even in the physical world, always ends with ananda. The poet, when he is writing, he creates a poem, there is ananda. When an artist creates or a musician creates a piece, there is ananda. So even at a physical level, there is ananda. Okay? So, and if child is born, there is ananda, there is creation. So this also is another aspect that he discusses. Okay? Now, now he comes to the discussion of the supraphysical worlds. So, if the supraphysical worlds are there, we have discussed this because after death, if the soul is real, it has to go into the supraphysical worlds. So, what is the nature of these supraphysical worlds? And he then discusses 3 questions. 3 questions come up when we have to talk of the supraphysical worlds. Okay? And they are like this. 1. Is there any evidence at all of the supraphysical worlds? This is one thing he discusses. Then the second question is, are these supraphysical worlds pell-mell, or they are all independent, or is there a gradation? Is there a graded upward ascent? So are they graded, or are they just equal to each other and into? The third question is, are they interrelated or interdependent? So this is also another question you have to see. When Sri Aurobindo uses words, you have to be very careful. He has used 2 words. Are they, what is the word he has used?
Interrelated.
Yeah. Are they interrelated?
Interdependent.
Or are they interdependent? So, interrelated means 2 friends are interrelated. Okay? 2 friends are related. They have a relation. But are they dependent on each other? No. So exactly this way you have to see. The other example we gave the other day is the mother and the child. Okay? There is a relation, no doubt, but there is also to some extent an interdependence. Not really, the mother need not always depend on the child, but the child definitely depends upon the mother in the early stages. So this is the nature. Which is the nature of these planes? Are they independent planes or are they related? And if they are related, are they interdependent on each other? So he goes into such great detail to examine each one. Okay, so then now he says, if they do exist, these planes, about proof. The materialist demands that if these planes exist, I need proof, he will say. But Sri Aurobindo points out that demanding proof in one world of things which exist in another world is illogical. Okay. He says that you can't demand. If you want to examine in the material field, yes, you use telescopes, microscopes, okay, and then you can examine and see there is proof. But the instruments to be used for the superior planes of consciousness are the instruments that belong there and not here. Okay. Now he also points out, but sometimes it does happen that these superior planes do show themselves and prove themselves in the physical world. Okay. He has not given the example, but I am giving an example. X-rays. Okay. The process of the X-ray is not material, and yet you have a proof that it exists because you can see the interior of the body, and you can do that with so the higher is showing itself in the lower. Or another example we can give also is the mobile. Okay. The existence of the mobile shows that there is a force which is not physical. There is a vibration that goes from one mobile to another mobile, which is not physical in a certain sense. And yet it is proving itself here. So he says sometimes proof does come of the supraphysical worlds in the physical world, but the materialist has no right to insist that everything must be proved. Sometimes proof may come by itself, but you have no right to say that you have to You want to go there and use the instruments of that plane to prove it. So you can prove the existence of those planes with the instruments of those planes, but not physical planes. Okay? So this is another thing that he talks about. In fact, we have seen also that the materialization also is something that a non-physical force is producing effects in the physical world. That also we have seen. And those of you who are not familiar with the incidents in the guest house, there were stones which are materializing and falling in the guest house. So that is one proof that materialization is possible. So this is, up to this point he has come. Okay, now we have come. And finally, what about spiritual experience? Okay, when you are getting spiritual experiences, there is a subjective experience which is supraphysical, but can there also be an objective experience? That's the whole question. Okay, so subjective experiences is you may experience ananda, you may experience power, but can another person in the physical world find out that you are really experiencing that? That's the whole question, subjective and objective. So even spiritual experiences can have objective proofs. Okay, so the person has completely changed, or in some of those cases it was absolutely physical. When he came to Pondicherry, he was of a fairly dark complexion, an average Indian dark complexion. And when after 3-4 years of intense sadhana, his body became a golden color. So there is physical proof that these things are possible from higher planes of consciousness. Okay, so I'll read the summary of what he said in the previous para, so that's our normal method. Okay, so if it be argued that our subtle sense experiences are unreliable, deceptive, as there is no verification possible for supranatural and supraphysical planes, then we may admit the error-prone character of such phenomena. So it is possible that you may hallucinate. So I'm just saying it's possible. Then we may admit the error-prone character of such phenomena. But error is not the prerogative of only the supraphysical events. You may hallucinate, but don't the science also makes mistakes? Does a doctor not commit a mistake? Does a theoretical scientist make wrong suppositions? Error is possible. So error itself is not a proof of the non-reality of these worlds. Just because you are not experiencing in the right way, it doesn't mean that doesn't exist. Okay? So physical senses and science too are frequently enough, and error cannot be a reason against their validity. Error is the heritage of our physical mind, which rises from the darkness of the inconscience. In both subjective and objective phenomena, unbiased investigation must be the norm. So don't go by error, but you examine each case without any partiality. Be absolutely impartial, and that's the whole thing. Then Swami is saying, we must point out that the traditional beliefs are not sufficient proof of the validity of supraphysical knowledge. Traditions are there, and everybody believes. There are beliefs in the West, there are beliefs in India, there are beliefs in every religion, but that need not necessarily be, we can depend on them. It's not, cannot depend on them. So you have to investigate yourself, find out the truth. Okay. Although there is often truth in these beliefs, their oral expression may introduce error. So he is saying that you may experience something, but when you are trying to express it in words, error can come in. Okay, so may introduce an error. A typical example of this error is the translation of the truth of higher planes of existence into the physical image of the Himalayas, being the abode of gods and divinities, a truth distorted into falsity. It's very interesting what he's saying. He's saying that the gods exist in a very high level of consciousness. But when we are in India, we say that the gods are living in the Himalayas and the height. So he says that this gets translated into something which is not real. So error is coming in. So therefore you can't judge with a material view, you can't judge the truth of supraphysical worlds. You have to examine them there itself. Alright? So now I read the paragraph that we have to read today. If we scrutinize the intimations of supraphysical world realities which we receive in our inner experience and compare it with the account of such intimations that have continued to come down to us from the beginnings of human knowledge, and if we attempt an interpretation and a summarized order, we shall find that what this inner experience most intimately conveys to us is the existence and action upon us of larger planes of being and consciousness than the purely material plane, with its restricted existence and action, of which we are aware in our narrow celestial formula. So he is saying that when you look at the thing very, very carefully, you will see that the physical world is affected not only by physical forces, but by supraphysical forces also. Okay? He is saying that these domains of larger being, supraphysical, are not altogether remote and separate from our own being and consciousness. For though they subsist in themselves and have their own play and process and formulations of existence and experience, yet at the same time they penetrate and develop the physical plane with their invisible presence and influences, and their powers seem to be here in the material world itself, behind its actions and objects. There are two main orders of experience in our contact with them. One is purely subjective, though in its subjectivity sufficiently vivid and palpable, and the other is objective. Now, if I am looking at you and you are experiencing, say, anger but not expressing it, it's not available to me. That is subjective. But there can be an objective proof also when the anger shows on your face. So there are two things, subjective and objective. Okay? So in the subjective order, we find that what shapes itself to us as a life intention, a life impulse, a life formulation here, already exists in a larger, more subtle, more plastic range of possibilities. And these pre-existed forces and formations are pressing upon us to realize themselves in the physical world also. But only a part succeeds in getting through, and even that emerges partially in a form and circumstance more proper to the system of terrestrial law and sequence. So, language is very complex, but what he is saying is that there are life planes, and from the life planes, they are trying to manifest in the physical world. There is a pressure, and these pressures sometimes show themselves, sometimes they don't show themselves. But there are constantly this pressure is there from the higher planes of consciousness. Okay, so we also know that when you have a thought, okay, and a very powerful thought, okay, it becomes independent of you and it goes into the thought world. And from there, it tries to enter into minds which are ready to receive it. Okay. For instance, we have seen in science that one idea is floated somewhere and the same idea is being floated somewhere else, because this thought has travelled all over and someone is there to receive it, they receive it, and the theory is expressed in two ways in two different places. Note interestingly how Jagadish Chandra Bose demonstrated the vibration, and he demonstrated in Calcutta in his laboratory that an impulse here can be received there. So this is the principle of the radio. But he didn't get the credit for the radio, it is Marconi in Italy who got the credit on the same principle. So it was discovered here and discovered there. Okay? So that's what Shanti is saying, that there are forces in the life worlds, there are forces in the mental worlds, there are forces in the higher spiritual worlds, and they are always trying to come down and manifest themselves in the physical world. Sometimes it comes through, sometimes it doesn't come through. Okay? So in our Indian scriptures, there is very often talks of apsaras coming and influencing rishis here. Okay? So this is an actual fact, but it is something that cannot be proved in the physical world. Okay, so there is constantly an interaction between.
What about the negative, the asura, the rakshasa?
The negative things are at the life plane. In the life plane, there are negative things. But once you go beyond the mind, there are no negative things. And also, since talking of negative is very interesting, that's a whole question also. The origin of falsehood and evil.
Yes.
That's a whole chapter. So, where is that coming from in the physical world? Is it coming in the involution itself? Is the divine, when he is involving himself here, is he creating also evil and error and falsehood? No. Then when the evolution is there, it is coming from there, he says. Because when you are starting from a pure consciousness, a pure divine consciousness cannot produce falsehood. So it is only manifesting and involving itself in the material world. But when you are starting from inconscience, you don't know where you are going. The evolution is going upwards. You go, there are 3 roads. You don't know which road to take. So error is possible. So falsehood and evil are errors in the evolutionary ladder, not in the involutionary ladder. Okay, so that's your question of the evil. It comes in here, not there. So these physical, supraphysical worlds which are there, in the involutionary worlds, there is no negative thing. No negative things at all. In the subjective order, we find that what shapes itself, that we read. Okay, so
yeah, we read that.
This
precipitation.
Pardon?
Yes. This precipitation.
Yeah, this precipitation. This precipitation takes place normally without our knowledge. There are forces which are influencing you, but you don't realize that they are. But when your consciousness rises to the higher levels of consciousness, you know from where a thought is coming, you know from where an emotion is coming, you know from where an impulsion is coming, you know, because you actually see them. Okay. The physical eyes don't see these vibrations, but the subtle eye sees all these vibrations. This precipitation takes place normally without our knowledge. We are not aware of the action of these powers, forces, influences upon us, but take them as formations of our own life and mind, even when our reason or will repudiates them and strives not to be mastered. Okay, so
interesting.
Yeah. It's a very interesting thing. I might as well mention this fact of our not being conscious. Okay, powers, forces, influences upon us, but we take them as formations of our own life and mind. When a thought comes in our mind, we say, "Oh, I have thought about this." You have not thought about this. It has come into your mind from outside. Life impulsion also. All these emotions, they are actually contagious.
Or desires.
Yes, desires also are contagious. So you must be very careful with whom you are mixing and what are your. That's why satsang has got a lot of sense. Okay, you mix with the right persons, the right vibrations will enter into you. You mix with the wrong persons, the wrong vibrations will enter into you without your knowledge. Not to be mastered. But when we go inwards, away from the restricted surface consciousness and develop a subtler sense and a deeper awareness, we begin to get an intimation of the origin of these movements and are able to watch their action. We are able to watch their action and process to accept or reject or modify. So then when you become conscious, you can let these forces come into you. Mother and Sri say that you have to put a watchman at your mental level and you put a watchman at your vital level. Allow only those which are beneficial to you and reject those which are not beneficial to you. Okay, so in Savitri, he is constantly using images. So he says that even if someone wants to come into you, examine their passport and see whether they have a visa to enter into your territory. He uses this image in Savitri. Okay, so influence acting upon our parts and others act upon our parts. This kind of experience is primarily of a purely subjective character, a pressure of ideas, suggestions, emotional formations, impulsions to sensation, action, dynamic experience. However large a part of this pressure may be traced to our own subliminal self, or to the siege of universal mind forces and life forces belong to our own world, there is an element which bears the stamp of another origin insisted supraterrestrial character. So he says, now he has used the word subliminal. So if you read Srivamdo, only one book or one, you will not understand what is meant by subliminal. So you have to know what is subliminal. So when Srivamdo is discussing, you have to have a fairly good background of his philosophy already to be able to understand him. Otherwise, simply reading random here and there is very difficult to understand. But the contacts do not stop here. Now note, remember, he has told you, he has asked the question whether these planes are interrelated and interdependent. So he is discussing the interrelation now. Okay. So, but these contacts from the higher worlds do not stop here, for there is also an opening of our mind and life parts to a greater range of subjective objective experiences, in which these planes present themselves no longer as extensions of subjective being and consciousness, but as worlds. Okay? They are whole worlds, all these: material world, life world, prana world, mental world, spiritual worlds, and right up to the divine worlds. So there is a gradation. Present themselves no longer as extensions of subjective being and consciousness, but as worlds. For the experiences there are organized as they are in our world, but on a different plan, with a different process and law of action, and in a substance which belongs to a supra-physical nature. Now this, we'll expand a little on this. Okay, he says, the laws of the material world are not absolutely applicable in the other higher worlds. So each world has got its own laws and its own rules and its own substance. Remember that these supraphysical worlds are not unsubstantial, they are substance. Just like your water has got 3 levels of substance. The material, ice is the physical world, water is the life world, and water vapor is the mental world. There is substance. So your thoughts also have substance. Okay? Your emotions have substance and color and all this. So that's what he's pointing out. Okay? So their organization at each plane is different. This organization includes, as our earth, the existence of beings who have or take forms, manifest themselves, or are naturally manifested in an embodying substance, but a substance other than ours, a subtle substance, tangible only to subtle sense, a supraphysical form matter. These worlds and beings may have nothing to do with ourselves and our life. They may exercise no action upon us, but often also they enter into secret communication with earth existence, obey or embody, or are the intermediaries and instruments of the cosmic powers and influences of which they have a subjective experience, or themselves act by their own initiation upon the terrestrial world's life and motives and happenings. In other words, he is saying these supraphysical worlds that exist are all populated. Don't think that they are really impersonal. There are actual personal forms and beings. We know very well, for instance, in the life world, there are little elves and gnomes and life powers, small powers which exist there only. They don't evolve, but they are there very much. 805.
Namaste all. Thank you for attending. We will meet again on Saturday at the same time to continue the Life Divine.